Hey everyone, welcome back. Are you ready for another deep dive?
Always. What do we got today?
You brought some interesting stuff about Baazar Style Retail Ltd.
Ah, yes. Their second quarter results for fiscal year 2025.
Looks like we've got quite the pile here. Company announcements?
Investor presentations, even the auditor's reports.
So let's dive in. First things first for anyone who hasn't heard of them, who is Baazar Style Retail Ltd.
Imagine a family in Kolkata
Okay,
looking for some clothes that are stylish but don't break the bank. That's where Bazaar Style comes in.
makes sense.
Founded in 2013, they've carved this niche as a value fashion retailer,
Okay, value fashion.
offering a whole bunch of apparel, home goods even, all with an emphasis on affordability and keeping up with the trends.
Right, and I'm seeing here in the investor presentation, they're really focusing on private label brands.
Yes. So it's not just about selling clothes, it's about building their own brands.
Smart.
Seems to be working too. Almost half their revenue now comes from these in-house labels.
Oh wow, that's a pretty big shift.
Yeah. It was much lower just a couple years ago.
It does make you wonder what's driving that customer response.
Right.
I mean, are they winning on style, price?
Probably a combination of both.
Right.
It reminds me of how some of the successful international retailers,
Yeah.
they've used private labels to get a loyal following, even shape fashion trends. I mean, it's about offering something unique that people feel good about buying.
For sure. And speaking of reaching people, let's talk growth. They've been expanding like crazy.
18 new stores just this quarter. They're up to 184 across 9 states.
Wow. And they're using that cluster-based approach, right?
Exactly. Instead of just spreading themselves thin all over the place, they're strategically concentrating stores in certain regions.
It's like creating little pockets where their brand is king.
Right. Makes you wonder, do you think they're using this to eventually, dominate the national market?
That's a good question.
Maybe.
Could be a stepping stone to national expansion.
Right. If they can establish themselves, like a strong foothold, a loyal customer base in these clusters,
Yeah.
it could fuel their growth, but on a much larger scale.
Interesting. So it's not just about adding stores, it's about placing them strategically and then building that brand presence.
You got it.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about strategy, but let's get into the numbers. What's the financial picture like?
Well, the company announcement says things are pretty rosy.
Rosy, okay.
Revenue's up by a huge 65% year over year.
65%, that's a lot.
And their same-store sales growth, that's even more impressive, 41%.
Wow, 41, okay.
That tells us they're not just relying on new stores to drive growth.
Right, their existing stores are doing really well.
Right.
And 41%, that's not just good, that's amazing.
It is, especially in this economic climate.
Yeah. I'm also seeing here that sales per square foot are climbing.
Oh, that's a key metric in retail, and seeing that go up suggests they're using their retail space really well.
What does that tell us?
Well, they're either getting more customers into the stores or they're getting each customer to spend more per visit.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a good sign.
Okay, and remember how we were talking about private label brands?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like that's really paying off. Their private label sales have gone up to almost 49% of their total sales.
That's right. And on top of that, they've managed to cut down their inventory days.
Like they're really moving those products efficiently.
Yeah, it seems like a well-managed supply chain, which can easily be overlooked.
But it's super crucial.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for a retailer like Bazaar Style that's growing this fast.
So it's like a well-oiled machine just humming along.
So far.
So far. But there's always hiccups, right?
Mm-hmm.
The auditor's report mentions a fire incident earlier this year.
Yeah, unfortunately. Back in May, their warehouse in Serampore, West Bengal,
Okay.
suffered a pretty significant fire. They lost inventory and property.
Oh, that's bad. What happened after?
Well, they filed insurance claims, and they seem pretty confident about recovering their losses. But we should definitely keep it in mind.
Yeah.
Think about how it could have impacted their financials, their operations, maybe in the short term.
Good point. Now, we can't forget about their recent IPO. They went public just last month.
Yep. Listing on both the NSE and the BSE.
Big move.
Yeah.
What does that say about their ambitions?
Well, going public is a big step. It usually means a company wants to grow faster, gives them more capital and visibility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they've laid out some plans. Further expansion, tech upgrades, making their private labels even stronger.
So they're definitely not just resting on their laurels.
Nope. They're using this to fuel their growth, take things even further. It shows they're in it for the long haul.
Sounds like it. And they're really embracing technology too. All these materials highlight how they're using things like Tableau for data analysis.
Oh, yeah, a CRM system, integrated systems for managing their warehouse. It's like they know that in retail today, technology isn't just a nice bonus.
It's like,
It's crucial.
hmm,
By leveraging data analytics, you can predict trends, optimize that inventory, make marketing more personalized. Ultimately, they're making smarter, faster decisions.
it's like they're becoming a tech company that just happens to sell clothes.
Exactly. They've woven technology into their core strategy, and that's something that sets them apart.
Okay, so they're growing quickly, using tech, building their brands. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not without their problems, are they? Their investor presentation mentions some possible challenges.
Of course, no business is perfect.
What kind of things?
Competition is always a factor, especially as they move into new markets, managing growth without sacrificing quality or efficiency. And then there's the economy, which can be a bit unpredictable.
Yeah, that could hurt consumer spending. So it sounds like maintaining this momentum won't be easy.
It won't. They have internal and external pressures to navigate. Their strategic thinking, their ability to adapt will be tested.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have their background, how they're growing, their tech use, even some potential challenges.
Now I'm really interested to see if the numbers back up all this success.
Let's dig in. The balance sheet, the cash flow statement, those will tell us a lot.
Okay, in part 2 of our deep dive, we're going to take a look at those financials.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at Baazar Style's balance sheet.
You know, for a lot of people, balance sheets can seem kind of boring,
Yeah,
but they're really important for understanding a company's financial health.
it's like a snapshot in time. It shows what the company owns,
Okay.
what they owe,
Hmm.
and the difference between those two, which is the value that belongs to their
It's
shareholders.
like a financial report card.
Yeah.
Assets, liabilities, and equity. What's Baazar Style Retail Ltd's report card look like?
Well, the first thing that jumps out at me is the significant growth in their assets. Their property, plant, and equipment has almost doubled since March 2022.
That makes sense considering they've been opening so many stores.
Right. More stores, more assets.
Right.
And it fits with their cluster-based approach. They're putting serious money into physical stores to really make their presence known in those markets.
But it's not just about owning those assets, right?
Right.
I'm also seeing a lot of growth in right-of-use assets. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. Right-of-use assets, that refers to leased properties. It's basically the right to use an asset, like a storefront, for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
It's a pretty common thing in retail because it lets companies expand without having to buy the properties outright.
Ah, so it's a way to leverage their resources and expand quickly. It's kind of like renting a house instead of buying one,
Exactly. It frees up their capital so they can use it for other things.
like inventory or tech.
Exactly. While still expanding their physical presence.
Mm.
Now, let's look at the other side. Their liabilities. You won't be surprised to see their lease liability has also gone up
Right, that makes sense.
because they have more right-of-use assets.
So that's basically the money they owe for those leased properties. Kind of like a mortgage, but for rent.
You got it. It's super important to keep these lease liabilities in mind when we're looking at their debt overall. It might not be a traditional loan, but it still means they'll have to make payments in the future.
So we're really trying to understand all the little details of their financial structure, especially in retail, where leasing is so common.
Mm-hmm. And another interesting thing on the liability side, their borrowings have actually dropped a lot since March 2024.
Really?
Probably because of their IPO. Sounds like they use some of that money to pay off debt.
That's a smart move.
It is. Gives them a bit more financial breathing room and lowers their interest expenses. It's like getting a raise and using some of it to pay off those high-interest credit cards.
Exactly.
It strengthens their financial position, shows they're being smart about managing debt. So if we look at both sides of the balance sheet together, what's the overall picture we're getting?
It seems like they're doing a good job of investing in assets for growth while also managing their liabilities responsibly. It's not just about expanding no matter what, it's about making sure it's financially sustainable.
I agree. They're not taking on crazy amounts of debt to grow, which is a good sign. That can be risky in the long run.
Okay, so far so good. Now let's switch gears and look at the cash flow statement. What can we learn from that?
Well, the cash flow statement, look at it like a movie. It shows us the cash moving in and out of the company
Okay.
over a specific period of time.
Well.
We can see where the cash is coming from, where it's going, and if they're making enough to support their operations and their growth.
So we're tracking their cash flow, which gives us a really dynamic view of their financial activities.
Yeah, and for a company that's growing fast, like Baazar Style, This is super important.
Yeah.
It tells us if they are actually generating enough cash from their main business to cover expenses,
Yeah.
fund their growth, and maybe even give back to investors through dividends.
Because growth without good cash flow can be a recipe for disaster.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So what's their cash flow statement saying?
Yeah, tell me.
Well, first, their net cash flow from operating activities. This is the cash they're making from actually running their business, like selling clothes, managing their inventory. This number has really been impressive over the past 3 years. It actually became positive in fiscal year 2024.
That's great.
It is. It means their core business is actually bringing in enough cash to cover their expenses and even contribute to growth.
So their business is not just getting bigger,
Mm-hmm.
it's getting stronger at its core too.
Exactly. That's the sign of a really healthy, sustainable business model. Now, let's look at their investing activities. They're spending quite a bit on those new stores.
Yeah, all those tech upgrades and other investments for expansion.
Mm-hmm. And we see that reflected in their cash flow from investing activities, which is negative.
Which doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right?
Not at all. It's totally normal for a fast-growing company to have a negative cash flow from investing activities. They're spending money to make money.
Okay, so it's all about the context.
Right. They're investing in their future, which is essential for long-term growth, even if it means their cash flow takes a temporary hit. Now, what about financing activities? Remember their IPO last month?
I do.
We can see that in their positive cash flow from financing activities in fiscal year 2024. That IPO gave them a lot of cash, which they can use to fund their expansion and other strategies.
And we saw they used some of it to pay off borrowings.
Right. A very sensible move. They're managing their debt strategically while making sure they have the money they need for future growth.
So they're using different financing methods to support their expansion. And it seems to be working.
Yeah, it does. So if we connect all the parts of the cash flow statement, what's the main takeaway?
I think it paints a really positive picture.
Yeah.
It shows a company that's good at managing cash flow to support their ambitious growth.
Mm-hmm. They're making money from their core operations,
Yeah.
investing in their future, and using financing options wisely.
It's like they're juggling all these different financial pieces and making sure they all work together smoothly.
I like that analogy. So both the balance sheet and the cash flow statement are telling us the same thing.
That Baazar Style Retail Ltd. is a company on the move.
And they're doing it with a strong financial foundation.
Absolutely. Their numbers back up everything they're saying about growth.
Innovation, their data-driven approach.
I'm starting to understand why investors are so interested in them.
Mm-hmm. But it's not all about the numbers, is it? Their investor presentation also talks a lot about operational efficiency, keeping costs low.
Their commitment to running a tight ship.
Yeah,
That's super crucial in value fashion, where margins can be razor thin.
for sure. It shows they're not just chasing revenue, they're also focused on keeping costs under control
Exactly.
and being as efficient as possible.
Yeah. Their presentation mentions some of those initiatives,
Yeah.
especially how they're using technology to streamline things,
Right, using data and analytics to make better decisions across the board.
from inventory to marketing even.
Exactly, like with Tableau, that helps them optimize inventory and anticipate trends.
Yeah.
And their CRM system helps them understand their customers better and target their marketing more effectively.
So it's like they're always finding ways to do more with less, to get the most out of every resource.
Mm-hmm. It's a lean and agile approach that seems to be working well.
And that focus on efficiency is crucial when you're in value fashion,
Yeah,
because customers are very sensitive to price.
exactly. It lets them offer competitive prices while still staying profitable.
It's a tough balance to strike,
It is.
but it seems like they've found the right formula. They're not cutting corners. They're just finding smarter ways to operate.
Working smarter, not harder. So we've talked about their balance sheet, cash flow statement, and even their focus on efficiency.
We have.
What's the most impressive part of their financial performance for you?
I think it's how well their strategic goals and their financial results line up.
Oh, yeah, I see that too.
Their plans for expansion, their focus on private labels, their investment in tech,
Hmm.
it's all showing up in their strong financials.
It's all one cohesive story. There's no disconnect between what they're saying and what the numbers are showing.
It's not just talk. They're backing it up with results.
Right.
I want to go back to their IPO for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Going public is a big deal. It comes with both opportunities and challenges.
Yeah. See, they're playing in the big leagues now.
Right. They have access to more capital, which is great for growth, but now they're under more scrutiny from investors and regulators.
Exactly. More transparency, more accountability.
It's not just about running a good business, it's about communicating effectively with the market.
And meeting their shareholders' expectations.
So how have they been handling this transition?
From what I see in their investor presentations, their announcements, they seem to be embracing it.
Yeah.
They're giving clear, detailed information about their financials, their growth plans, even their challenges.
Okay.
They're not avoiding tough questions, which I think is a good sign.
It's like they're inviting investors to come along for the ride.
Yeah, be a part of their success.
And that transparency can really build trust and confidence.
Oh, for sure. It's crucial for a company that's new to the public markets.
So what do you think the future holds for Baazar Style Retail Ltd?
Yeah.
Now that they're public, they have a lot of momentum, but can they keep it up?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
They have a lot going for them. Ambitious growth plans, a strong financial base, a clear vision for using technology.
But they also need to navigate a public market where expectations are high and competition is fierce.
Yeah, the stakes are definitely higher. They need to deliver results and keep meeting those expectations.
While also adapting to a retail world that never stands still.
It's a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity.
For sure.
They've proven they can adapt, they're innovative, and they execute well. And that's what gives them a real chance to succeed in this environment.
All right, so in this part of our deep dive, we've looked at their balance sheet, their cash flow statement, their efficiency, and even what it means for them to be a public company now.
And through it all, we see a consistent theme. This is a company that's not just growing,
Right.
but growing in a smart way with a clear vision and strong financials.
They're not just riding a wave, they're creating their own.
Exactly. But we need to remember, they're not operating in a bubble.
That's true. What do you mean?
They have competition, established players, new companies trying to get in,
Right.
all fighting for the same customers in the value fashion market.
So we need to understand that competitive landscape to really assess their potential.
Yeah, and the challenges they might face. That's where the real test is.
All right. In part 3, we're going to look at that competitive landscape and see if Baazar Style Retail Ltd has what it takes to become a major player in this market. Okay, so we've looked at their financials, how they're growing, even how they're using tech. But now we've got to see how they compare to their competition. What's the value fashion world like out there?
Imagine a huge, crowded marketplace. Everyone's trying to find the best deals on trendy clothes. That's value fashion. It's crowded, it's competitive, and it's always changing.
So no walk in the park for Baazar Style Retail Ltd then?
Not exactly.
Who are they up against in this fight for the value-conscious shopper?
Oh, they've got competition on all sides.
Right.
Well, you've got your big national players with tons of stores and money to spend.
Okay.
Then you've got the regional guys. They know their local markets really well.
Makes sense.
And don't forget online retailers. They're everywhere, pushing for more convenience, lower prices all the time.
So how does Baazar Style Retail Ltd stand out? What are their advantages?
One of their biggest strengths, I think, is their focus on private label brands.
Right, we talked about that.
It's not just about selling any clothes. It's about creating their own brands that their target customer really connects with.
So they have more control over quality, prices, and even their profit margins.
Exactly. And it's working. Their private label sales are huge, almost half their revenue now.
Makes you wonder, what's drawing people in?
Yeah.
Is it the style, the price?
I think it's a bit of everything. They've figured out how to offer trendy clothes at good prices, all while building that brand loyalty. Their private labels aren't just seen as cheap. They're actually desirable.
Interesting. So it's about creating value that goes beyond just a low price tag.
Right. And their cluster-based expansion plays into that, too.
How so?
By focusing on specific areas, they're kind of dominating those markets. It's harder for competitors to squeeze in.
Smart. Especially in value fashion, where everyone's fighting for attention. It's not just about being there, it's about being the biggest, the most visible.
Exactly.
But they must have some big challenges too, even with these advantages.
Now, of course, nobody's perfect. Competition is tough. To keep this up, they'll need to be really adaptable.
Okay.
As they move into new markets, they'll face tougher rivals, some national, some regional. Got to stay one step ahead.
Like a constant race.
Kind of. And managing fast growth is hard.
What do you mean?
Well, can their supply chain keep up? Their logistics, their infrastructure, all of that has to scale up without losing quality or efficiency.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle.
Any little mistake can slow them down.
It's like building a rocket ship while it's already flying.
Yeah, you got to balance speed and stability. And then there are things they can't control, like the economy.
Right.
Things change so quickly. Customer tastes can shift overnight. They need to be ready for anything.
Sounds like a lot to juggle. High stakes, lots of moving pieces.
That's business, especially in retail. But look, they've shown they can adapt. They're innovative. They get things done. That gives them a real shot at success.
It's like they're creating a whole new strategy for value fashion.
And we get to watch and see how it plays out. They've definitely got our attention with their performance so far and their big plans for the future.
So it's a story that's still being written.
We'll have to see what happens next. It's definitely an exciting company to watch.
I think we've done a pretty thorough job today.
We have. We've gone from their beginnings all the way to where they are now, a real up-and-comer in the value fashion world.
Looked at their financials, how they're growing, the competition, even the challenges they face. It's been a deep dive.
It has.
But of course, there's always more to explore. So we wanted to go even deeper. We could look at their complete financial statements, industry trends, more detailed competitive analysis.
Absolutely. There's always more to learn.
So for everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep digging. The business world is full of these amazing stories just waiting to be discovered.
And that wraps up our deep dive on Baazar Style Retail Ltd. Until next time, happy investing.